Levi Harland carved the turkey with the same precision he used on motorcycle engines. Each slice fell away clean, revealing the moist meat beneath. 27 years of marriage had taught him that Thanksgiving required perfect cuts, anything less invited complaints. The dining room buzzed with forced conversation. Naomi pushed sweet potatoes around her plate while Bryson stared at his phone. Aunt Cleo picked at her green beans, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Marley sat across from him, fidgeting with her wedding ring. "Pass the gravy," Bryson muttered. Levi slid the ceramic boat across the table. His son caught it without looking up. 27 years old and still sulking like a teenager. The divorce had hit him hard, but wallowing wouldn't fix anything. So, Marley's voice cut through the quiet. She set down her fork with a deliberate clink. "I have something to tell everyone." Naomi glanced up from her plate. "What now, Mom?" "I've decided to sell the house." The words hung in the air like smoke from a grease fire. Levi continued carving, his knife moving with steady strokes. Behind him, the grandfather clock ticked its familiar rhythm. "Excuse me." Bryson's phone hit the table. Marley's chin lifted. "Silas and I have been talking. His boys need a proper backyard. This place is too big for us now anyway." "Us?" Naomi's voice cracked. "Since when is there an us?" Aunt Cleo snorted. "Child's got a point." Marley shot the old woman a glare. "Silas is moving in after Christmas. We're going to list the house in January." Levi set down the carving knife. The blade caught the light from the chandelier, the same fixture Marley had insisted they buy during their 3rd year of marriage. He thought it was too fancy then. Still did. "That's so." He wiped his hands on his napkin, then stood. His chair scraped against the hardwood floor. "I'll be right back." He walked to his study, his boots echoing in the hallway. The manila envelope sat exactly where he'd left it, next to his briefcase on the oak desk. He'd prepared for this moment for 6 weeks. Longer, if he counted the planning. When he returned to the dining room, Marley was explaining her timeline to the kids. "The market's good right now. We should get asking price, maybe more." Levi placed the envelope in front of her plate. "Since we're making announcements." Marley stared at the yellow paper. "What's this?" "Open it." Her fingers trembled as she tore the seal. Inside were documents bearing the county seal, official stamps, and legal signatures. Her face drained of color as she read. "You bought out my share." The words came out strangled. 6 weeks ago. "The house is mine." Bryson leaned forward. "Dad, your mother wanted to make decisions about this family's property. I made sure she couldn't." Levi sat back down and picked up his fork. "Thanksgiving dinner's getting cold." Marley's hands shook as she flipped through the pages. "You can't do this. I'm your wife." "Are you?" Levi cut a piece of turkey. "Because wives don't usually spend their afternoons at the Pine Ridge Motel with contractors." The silence that followed was complete. Even the grandfather clock seemed to pause. Naomi's face went white. "Mom." Marley stood so fast her chair toppled backward. "You bastard." "Sit down, Marley." Levi's voice carried the same tone he'd used with green recruits 25 years ago. "When not done eating, I don't have to listen to this." "You're right. You don't. But if you leave this table, you leave this house. Tonight." Aunt Cleo cackled. "About damn time somebody grew a spine around here." Marley's face twisted with rage. "You think you're so smart? So in control? I've been unhappy for years, Levi. Years. You never talk to me. Never touch me. Never anything. I know exactly how unhappy you've been. Down to the minute." The implications hit her like a slap. Her mouth opened and closed without sound. Bryson pushed back from the table. "Jesus Christ, Mom." "Language," Aunt Cleo warned. "No, Aunt Cleo. This is exactly the time for that language." Bryson stood, his fists clenched. "How long?" Marley looked around the table, searching for sympathy. Finding none, she straightened her shoulders. "Silas makes me feel alive. He listens to me. He's married to someone else." Naomi interrupted. "Separated? That's not the same thing," Levi said quietly. He cut another piece of turkey. "But then, you've never been good with distinctions." Marley grabbed her purse from the sideboard. "I don't have to stay here and be insulted." "No," Levi agreed. "You don't." She stormed toward the front door, her heels clicking against the hardwood. The slam echoed through the house like a gunshot, Aunt Cleo reached for the cranberry sauce. Pass the rolls, would you, Naomi? This turkey's dry as a bone. That night, Levi sat in his study with a tumbler of whiskey and a box of photographs. The amber liquid burned his throat as he flipped through 27 years of memories. Here was Marley at 24, laughing at something he'd said during their first date. Her hair caught the sunlight streaming through the diner window. She'd ordered pie for breakfast and told him life was too short for proper meal schedules. He'd fallen for that spontaneity. After 8 years in the army, her chaos felt like freedom. Another photo, their wedding day. Marley in white lace, him in his dress uniform. Her hand rested on his chest, right over his heart. She'd whispered that she'd never felt safer than when she was with him. The lies came later. Small ones at first. I'm going to book club. But the book club had ended 2 months earlier. Shopping with Linda. Linda had been out of town. Yoga class ran late. The studio closed at 8. Levi had said nothing. He'd learned in the military that some battles weren't worth fighting. Marriage was supposed to be different, but old habits died hard. The affair started a year ago. He knew because Aunt Cleo had caught Marley sneaking out one February night. That girl's up to no good, Cleo had told him over breakfast. Saw her creeping to her car at midnight. She think I'm blind? Levi had hired a private investigator that afternoon. The man was expensive but thorough. Within 2 weeks, he had photos, hotel receipts, and phone records. Marley and Silas Brennan, meeting twice a week for 6 months. The investigator had also provided background on Brennan. 2 ex-wives, 3 kids, outstanding child support, a restraining order from wife number 2. Levi had spent the next 10 months preparing. Quietly, methodically, he'd refinanced the house, using Marley's signature on paperwork she'd barely read. Buried in the documents was a marital agreement stating that adultery voided all property claims. His lawyer had explained it carefully. Marley had signed it anyway, too focused on her afternoon plans to pay attention that he'd moved money into accounts she couldn't access, separated their credit cards, canceled her gym membership and car insurance both under his name, built a legal wall between his assets and her choices. Tonight, that wall had held. Levi closed the photo box and picked up his phone. 1 missed call from Marley. No voicemail that he deleted it without listening. 3 days later, Naomi knocked on his garage door. Levi looked up from a 1974 Sportster he was rebuilding. His daughter stood in the doorway, her nursing school backpack slung over one shoulder. Mom's staying at Silas's place, she said without preamble. Levi wiped his hands on a shop rag. I figured. She wants to talk to you. I don't. Naomi stepped into the garage, avoiding the oil stains on the concrete floor. Dad, maybe you should hear her out. People make mistakes. Some mistakes you don't come back from. She's still my mother. Levi set down his wrench. Yes, she is. And she'll always be your mother. But she's not my wife anymore. The papers. Make it official. Nothing more. Naomi pulled out her phone. She's been calling me. And Bryson says you won't let her get her things. She can get her things. With a police escort. During business hours. Dad. Naomi. Levi's voice carried the weight of 27 years of disappointment. Your mother chose another man's bed over our family. I choose not to pretend that's forgivable. His daughter's eyes filled with tears. Maybe if you'd fought for her. A man shouldn't have to fight his wife's lover for his wife's attention. Naomi wiped her eyes. Bryson says it's Silas's kids. 3. 2 with his first wife, 1 with the second. And they're all going to live together. That appears to be the plan. Naomi shook her head. This is insane. Your mother's choices often are. The garage door rumbled open. Bryson walked in, his face dark with anger. Just talk to Mom. And Levi resumed, working on a motorcycle. She slapped Naomi yesterday when Naomi asked about Silas's ex-wives. Levi's wrench stilled. She hit you. Naomi touched her cheek. It wasn't hard. She hit you. The words came out flat and dangerous. I called her a homewrecker, Naomi admitted. Maybe I deserve. No. Levi stood slowly. You didn't deserve anything. Bryson's fists clenched. I told her if she ever touches Naomi again, I'll forget she's my mother. What did she say? That you turned us against her. That we don't understand what it's like being married to someone who doesn't communicate. Levi picked up another wrench. Communication works both ways. She wants half the business too, Bryson continued. Says she helped build it. By doing what? Bookkeeping. Answering phones. The first few years. Levi had been expecting this. Marley's lawyer would argue that she'd contributed to the garage's success. They'd be wrong, but they'd argue it anyway. Let her try. The garage door opened again. A tall man with graying hair stepped inside. Levi recognized Teo Madsen from his interview the week before. Ex-con, but clean for 3 years. Good with engines. Better with keeping his mouth shut. Mr. Harland? I'm supposed to start today. Levi nodded. Teo, meet my kids. Naomi, Bryson. This is Teo. He'll be working the restoration side. Teo shook their hands. Nice to meet you both. Teo did 8 years for armed robbery. Levi told his children. Got out, got clean, learned motorcycles in a halfway house shop. Naomi's eyes widened. Bryson studied the older man with interest. Everyone deserves a second chance, Teo said quietly. Your father's giving me mine. Levi handed him a shop coat. Teo understands loyalty and consequences. The message wasn't lost on his children, or on Teo, whose smile held genuine gratitude. Where do you want me to start, boss? Levi pointed to a 1978 Kawasaki in the corner. Engine rebuild. Take your time. Do it right. As Teo got to work, Bryson pulled his father aside. Why'd you hire him? Because he knows what happens when you make bad choices. And he knows the value of someone willing to trust you despite your past. And Mom, your mother never learned either lesson. The garage filled with the familiar sounds of work wrenches turning, metal grinding, engines humming. It was a good sound, honest, unlike the silence that had filled his house for the past year. December brought snow to Flagstaff, and with it, Levi's quiet campaign of calculated moves. He stood in the guest house that had served as Marley's retreat for the past 2 years, measuring the main room for renovation. Aunt Cleo shuffled through the front door, her cane tapping against the hardwood. About time you did something with this place. Moving you in this weekend. Good. That woman spent too much time out here anyway, hiding from her own family. Cleo examined the built-in bookcases. What's going where? Office. Meeting space. Workshop for smaller jobs. The old woman cackled. Erasing her. Are you? Replacing her. Levi had already moved Cleo's belongings from the main house guest room to here. Her medical equipment, her books, her collection of porcelain cats that Marley had always complained about. The old woman needed independence, but she also needed family close by. This arrangement worked for both of them. Monday morning brought Marley's first attempt at negotiation. She called while he was reviewing invoices at his desk. Levi, we need to talk. No, we don't. I went to my bank. You cancel my credit cards. I cancel cards on my accounts. Get your own. How am I supposed to live? Levi set down his pen. That's not my problem anymore. I'm still your wife. On paper. For now. Silas says I should fight this. That you can't just cut me off. Silas says a lot of things. Most of them lies. He's a good man. Good men don't sleep with married women. Marley's voice hardened. You never wanted me anyway. I wanted the woman I married. She disappeared years ago. I'm the same person. No, you're not. The woman I married wouldn't have done this to our children. The line went quiet for a long moment. Then, I want my car. It's in my name. I canceled the insurance. You can't do that. Watch me. Levi hung up. An hour later, his lawyer called. Dominic Quall spoke with the precise diction of a man who'd spent 30 years arguing in courtrooms. She's hired representation. Janet Morrison. Good lawyer. Expensive. Aggressive. Specializes in divorce cases where the wife feels wronged. How wronged does Marley feel? Wronged enough to demand half your business, the house, and alimony. Levi leaned back in his chair. What are our chances? With the marital agreement? Excellent. Without it, we'd be in for a fight. And with her infidelity, that's where it gets interesting. Arizona is a no-fault state, but adultery can affect property division in extreme cases. Your documentation is thorough. How thorough? Thorough enough to bury her. Levi thought about Naomi's tears, Bryson's anger, the empty chair at Thanksgiving dinner. Then let's start digging. By Christmas, Marley had launched her own campaign. She started with their mutual friends, spinning a story of neglect and emotional abandonment. He never talked to me, she told Linda Chambers over coffee at the local cafe. 27 years, and the man barely said good morning. Linda, who'd known them both since the early years, listened with growing skepticism. Marley, Levi's always been quiet. That's not the same as cruel. You don't understand what it's like living with someone who shuts you out. And Silas makes you feel heard. Marley's eyes brightened. He listens. Really listens. When I talk about my dreams, my fears, he cares. What about his own family? His kids? They'll adjust. Children are resilient. Linda stirred her coffee slowly. His youngest is 9, Marley. That's hardly resilient age. You sound like Levi. Maybe because Levi has a point. The conversation ended badly. Linda left money on the table and walked out without saying goodbye. Similar scenes played out across town. Marley discovered that 27 years of marriage had built more loyalty for Levi than sympathy for her situation. People remembered the teenage Bryson working in the garage, learning discipline and skill from his father. They remembered Naomi's tears when Levi taught her to change her first tire. They remembered a man who showed up, kept his word, and built something lasting. Marley's story of neglect rang hollow against those memories. Her freedom party was a disaster. Held at Silas's rental house 3 days after Christmas, it attracted mostly his friends and a few of Marley's book club acquaintances. The decorations were cheap. The food was catered from a chain restaurant. Silas's children wandered through the crowd like lost tourists. Naomi and Bryson didn't come. Neither did most of the people Marley had expected. "Where is everyone?" she asked Silas as they stood in his empty living room. "People have plans. It's the holidays. They're judging me. Let them judge. We know the truth." But even Silas seemed distracted. He'd been checking his phone all evening, frowning at messages. His ex-wife's lawyer had been calling about missed support payments. The construction season had been slow. Money was tighter than he'd let on. "Marley, we need to talk about expenses." "What about them?" "Rent's due next week. And the boys need school supplies for next semester." "I thought you had that covered." Silas rubbed his neck. "Things are tight right now. Maybe you could sell some jewelry? Just temporarily." Marley stared at him. "My jewelry? The diamond earrings Levi bought you. The tennis bracelet. Stuff you don't wear anyway. Those are mine. And this is our future. Sometimes you have to sacrifice for the people you love." The word love should have soothed her. Instead, it felt like a transaction. Meanwhile, across town, Naomi was making a disturbing discovery. She'd stopped by the grocery store for milk and encountered Micah, Silas's youngest son. The 9-year-old was buying frozen dinners with food stamps, his jacket too thin for the December cold. "Hey there," Naomi said gently. "You're Silas's boy, right?" Micah nodded without looking up. "Where's your dad?" "Working late. Ryder's watching TV." Naomi noticed the bruise on the child's wrist as he reached for his change. Purple-black, finger-shaped. Fresh. "Micah, are you okay?" The boy pulled his sleeve down quickly. "I fell. That looks like it hurts. I gotta go." He hurried away, clutching his bag of frozen meals. Naomi watched him disappear into the snowy parking lot, her nursing training screaming warnings she didn't want to believe. The next morning, Levi sat across from Dominic Qualls in the lawyer's downtown office. Snow swirled outside the windows, but the room was warm with the heat of impending victory. "She's demanding a forensic accounting of your business," Dominic said, sliding papers across his mahogany desk. "Claims you've hidden assets. Let her look. Books are clean. She's also claiming emotional abuse. Says you controlled her finances and isolated her from friends." Levi almost smiled. "How many friends came to her party?" "According to my sources, 12. Out of 50 invitations. Isolation tends to be self-imposed." Dominic pulled out a thicker folder. "This is where it gets interesting. Remember that refinancing you did 3 years ago? The marital agreement. She signed it. Notarized. Witnessed. In it, she agrees that adultery voids all claims to marital property. And if she claims she didn't understand what she was signing, we have video of the signing. She asked questions. I explained the terms clearly. She signed anyway." Dominic's smile was shark-like. She was too eager to get to her afternoon yoga class to read carefully. Yoga class that didn't exist. Exactly. She was already having the affair when she signed away her rights. Levi studied the papers. Legal language, but clear enough. Marley had sealed her own fate with a pen stroke and a lie about exercise. What happens now? We file for dissolution. Cite irreconcilable differences and adultery. Present the agreement. Game over. She'll fight it. Of course. But fighting doesn't mean winning. Her lawyer's good, but she's not magic. The law is the law. And if Marley tries to claim abuse, Dominic leaned forward. That's where we play hardball. We have Aunt Cleo's testimony about catching her sneaking out. We have the private investigator's evidence. We have financial records showing she was spending marital assets on her affair. If she wants to fight dirty, we'll bury her so deep she'll need archaeology to find daylight. Levi thought about his children, about the example he was setting, about the difference between justice and revenge. I don't want to hurt her. I want her gone. Sometimes they're the same thing. That evening, Naomi called Bryson from her apartment near the nursing school. We need to talk about Silas. What about him? I think he's hurting his kids. The line went quiet. Then what did you see? Naomi described her encounter with Micah, the bruises, the child's fearful response. And there's more. I did some digging. What kind of digging? The kind Dad would do. Background checks. Court records. It's all public information if you know where to look. And he owes $40,000 in back child support. Has 2 pending lawsuits from contractors he stiffed. And Bryson, his second ex-wife, has a restraining order against him. For what? Domestic violence. Filed 2 years ago. Still active. Bryson cursed under his breath. Does Mom know? I tried to tell her yesterday. She said I was making things up to side with Dad. Where are you now? Home. What? Stay there. I'm coming over. An hour later, Bryson sat on Naomi's couch with a beer and a manila folder thick with printouts. I called Dad. He already knew about Silas's background. And he didn't tell us. He's letting us figure it out ourselves. Says we need to make our own choices about Mom. Naomi stared at the police reports, court documents, and financial records spread across her coffee table. She's living with a man who beats women and children. And she slapped you for asking questions. We have to do something. Like what? Talk to her. Show her this evidence. Make her see what she's gotten into. Bryson shook his head. She won't listen. She's too invested in her fairy tale. So we just let her stay with someone dangerous? She's a grown woman, Naomi. She made her choice. What if he hurts her? Bryson's face hardened. Then she'll learn the same lesson his other wives learned. Some people only understand consequences after they're bleeding. The next day, despite Bryson's warnings, Naomi drove to Silas's house. She found Marley loading boxes into a U-Haul truck parked in the driveway. Mom. Marley looked up, sweat beading on her forehead despite the cold. Naomi, what are you doing here? Moving in permanently. Silas thinks it's time. His lease is up next month anyway, and with your father being so unreasonable about money. Mom, we need to talk. About Silas. Marley's face closed down. If you're here to tell me more lies. They're not lies. Naomi pulled out a folder of documents. Court records. Police reports. He's not who you think he is. I don't want to see that. Mom, he owes child support. He's been in court for domestic violence. His ex-wife is scared of him. People lie when they're angry. The police don't lie. Judges don't lie. Marley grabbed the folder and threw on the ground. Papers scattered across the driveway, mixing with dirty snow. You're just like your father. Cold. Controlling. Impossible to please. I'm trying to protect you. From what? From being happy? From having someone who actually wants me? From getting hurt? The only person hurting me is my own family. Naomi knelt to gather the scattered papers. What about his kids, Mom? What about Micah? What about him? He has bruises. Marley's face went white, then red. How dare you? Look at the evidence. The slap came without warning. Harder than before, with the full force of Marley's frustration and guilt. Naomi's head snapped sideways, her cheek burning. Get off this property. Now. Naomi touched her stinging face. Mom, you're not my daughter anymore. My daughter would support my happiness. Your happiness is built on someone else's pain. Get out. Naomi gathered the papers and walked to her car, her cheek throbbing. As she drove away, she saw Silas emerge from the house. He put his arm around Marley's shoulders, whispering something that made her nod and lean into him, the predator comforting his prey. That night, Bryson found Naomi crying on Dad's front porch. He took one look at her swollen cheek and walked into the house without a word. 15 minutes later, he was back. Where is she? Bryson, don't. Where? His house. But please don't do anything stupid. Stupid would be letting this slide. Bryson drove to Silas's house with 30 years of his father's lessons burning in his chest. He found Marley in the driveway, still loading boxes. You hit her again. Marley straightened, clutching a box of kitchen items. She was being disrespectful. She was trying to save your life. My life doesn't need saving. Yeah? Tell that to his ex-wives. Get off this property, Bryson. Gladly. But first, let me make something clear. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to the same dangerous quiet their father used. If you ever touch Naomi again, I'll forget you gave birth to me. I'll forget 27 years of calling you Mom. I'll forget every good memory I have of you. You can't mean that. Try me. Marley's face crumpled. I'm your mother. No, Bryson said quietly. You're just some guy's girlfriend now. He walked away, leaving her standing in the driveway with her boxes and her choices. That night, Levi sat at his kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the grandfather clock and the soft murmur of Aunt Cleo's television from the guest house. He'd never been good with words. Actions had always spoken louder in his world. Fix the engine. Pay the bills. Show up when needed. But his children were hurting, and actions weren't enough anymore. The letter started simply. Naomi and Bryson, I didn't speak much over the years. Thought actions spoke louder. I realize silence can also be cowardice. That ends now. He wrote about the early years of marriage, when Marley's energy had balanced his discipline, about the slow decay that followed, the growing distance, the 1,000 small betrayals that preceded the large one. He wrote about discovering the affair, about the choice between fighting for someone who didn't want to be fought for and protecting what remained of his family. Your mother made her choice. I want to apologize for making mine. Some things can't be forgiven because forgiving them would mean betraying everything I taught you about consequences and character. But I want you to understand, my anger is not your burden to carry. Love her if you can. Forgive her if you must. But don't let her choices define your worth or your future. The letter grew longer as he wrote about his plans for the business, his hopes for their futures, his regret at the silence that had defined too much of their family life. That I failed to protect you from this. I failed to see how far she'd fallen until it was too late to pull her back. Those failures are mine, not yours. What happens next is up to us. All of us. Love. Daddy sealed the letter and set it aside. Tomorrow, he'd give it to them. Tonight, he had other work to do. Levi pulled out his phone and dialed his lawyer. Dominic? It's Levi. I want to establish a scholarship fund. Trade school kids. Automotive training. Tonight, I want to announce this week, before the court filings. Amount, $50,000 to start. Annual contributions after that. That's generous. It's necessary. What do you want to call it? Levi thought about his father, who'd taught him that a man's worth was measured by what he built, not what he destroyed. The Robert Harlan Memorial Scholarship, for kids who understand that honest work builds character. The announcement hit the local paper 3 days later. Within a week, the story had spread through town. Levi Harlan, the quiet mechanic who'd built a successful business from nothing, was giving back to the community that had supported him. The contrast with his wife's very public drama wasn't lost on anyone. Phone calls started coming. Customers expressing support. Former employees sharing stories about Levi's fairness and integrity. The high school shop teacher asking about mentorship opportunities. For the first time in months, Levi felt something approaching peace. February brought more snow and Silas Brennan's spectacular downfall. It started with a routine traffic stop. Levi learned about it from Bryson, who'd heard it from a friend who worked dispatch. Silas had been pulled over for speeding near his ex-wife's house. A simple violation that should have resulted in a ticket. Instead, it resulted in handcuffs. Restraining order violation. Bryson explained over coffee at the garage. Apparently, he's been driving by her place for weeks. Where was Marley? In the passenger seat. She got to watch the whole thing. Levi sipped his coffee, feeling nothing resembling satisfaction. This was just consequence catching up with poor choices. What happens now? Court hearing next week. His ex-wife's pressing charges. And his kids. CPS took them temporarily. The domestic violence history, plus the restraining order violation, was enough. Levi thought about 9-year-old Micah buying frozen dinners with food stamps. About bruises shaped like adult fingers. Good. Dad. Yes. Did you know this would happen? Levi met his son's eyes steadily. I knew what kind of man he was. I knew men like that eventually get caught. You didn't arrange anything? I didn't have to. Silas arranged it himself. But that wasn't entirely true. 3 weeks earlier, Levi had received a call from Janet Morrison, Marley's lawyer. She'd been curious about the source of certain information that had reached the police about Silas's activities. Anonymous tip, she'd said, but very detailed, almost like someone had been watching him. Levi had been watching, through the same private investigator who documented Marley's affair. The man was thorough and patient. He'd followed Silas for a month, documenting his visits to his ex-wife's neighborhood, his interactions with his children, his financial irregularities. When the time was right, that information had found its way to the proper authorities. Not arrangement. Just information reaching the people who needed it. The distinction mattered to Levi, even if it wouldn't matter to Marley. She called that afternoon, sobbing into the phone. They arrested him right in front of me, right in front of everyone. I heard. You did this. Somehow, you made this happen. I didn't make him violate a restraining order. Don't play stupid, Levi. This is too convenient. Truth often is. I need help. I need money for bail. Levi set down his wrench. No, he's innocent. Of what? The driving? The stalking? The child support he hasn't paid? Or just the domestic violence convictions? You bastard. Probably. But I'm not the one in jail. Marley hung up. An hour later, she was standing in his garage doorway. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled. The confident woman who'd announced her plans at Thanksgiving had been replaced by someone desperate and grasping. Please. No. I'll sign the divorce papers. I'll give up all claims to the house, the business, everything. You already gave those up when you signed the marital agreement. Then what do you want? Levi looked at her for a long moment. 27 years of marriage, reduced to this negotiation in a mechanic's garage. I want you to leave my children alone. They're my children too. You slapped Naomi. Twice. You chose another man over their well-being. You've lost the right to claim them. I love them. Love isn't enough. It never was. Marley's face crumpled. What am I supposed to do? Figure it out. Like the rest of us. She left without another word. Through the garage window, Levi watched her walk to her car, a 10-year-old sedan Silas had found for her after Levi reclaimed the SUV. She sat behind the wheel for several minutes before starting the engine. She didn't come back. The court hearing was a disaster for Marley, but not for the reasons she expected. She'd hire a new lawyer after Janet Morrison withdrew from the case. The new man, fresh from law school and hungry for any client, had convinced her to file for emergency spousal support and a portion of Levi's business assets. Emotional and financial abuse, he'd explained. We paint you as the victim of a controlling husband who used money as a weapon. It might have worked with a different judge, or a different set of facts. Instead, they got Judge Patricia Newman, a 60-year-old former family attorney who'd seen every variation of divorce drama in her 20 years on the bench. And they got Dominic Qualls, who arrived with 3 banker's boxes of evidence, and Aunt Cleo as a witness. The hearing started badly for Marley and got worse from there. Her lawyer painted a picture of isolation and control. Levi had managed all their finances, canceled her credit cards, forced her to account for every dollar. Dominic's response was surgical. Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit A. The marital agreement signed by Mrs. Harland 3 years ago, clearly stating that adultery voids all property claims. Objection. Marley's lawyer stood. My client was coerced into signing under duress. Your Honor, Dominic continued smoothly, I have video of the signing. Mrs. Harland asked questions, received clear answers, and signed voluntarily. She was, in fact, eager to complete the process quickly. The video played on a laptop screen. Marley at the lawyer's office, checking her watch repeatedly, asking about clauses while obviously distracted. Her signature was clear and deliberate. Furthermore, Dominic said, Mrs. Harland was already engaged in an extramarital affair when she signed this agreement. She was essentially signing away her rights to property while actively violating her marriage vows. How can you prove that? Marley's lawyer demanded. Exhibit B. Hotel receipts, phone records, and surveillance photographs dating back 14 months, all predating the marital agreement by 6 months. The evidence hit the courtroom like a freight train. Photos of Marley and Silas entering hotels. Credit card receipts for expensive dinners while she claimed to be at book club. Phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts. Marley's face went white as her lawyer frantically shuffled through papers he'd never seen before. Your Honor, he stammered, my client was trapped in a loveless marriage. Your client was committing adultery. Judge Newman interrupted. The marriage agreement clearly states the consequences of that choice. But the financial abuse. Exhibit C, Dominic said calmly. Mrs. Harland's spending records for the past 2 years. Spa treatments, expensive dinners, weekend trips to Phoenix. All funded by joint accounts. All occurring while she was conducting her affair. In Exhibit D, he continued, Mrs. Harland used marital funds to pay for hotel rooms for her extramarital relationship. She essentially used her husband's money to finance her betrayal. The judge's face grew stern. Mrs. Harland, did you use joint funds to pay for activities related to your affair? Marley's lawyer grabbed her arm before she could answer. My client invokes her Fifth Amendment rights. Too late for that, Dominic said. She already admitted to the affair in her initial filing. She can't claim innocence now. Judge Newman leaned forward. Mrs. Harland, I'm going to ask you directly. Did you use marital funds to conduct an extramarital affair? Marley looked around the courtroom desperately. Levi sat in the back row, his face impassive. Naomi and Bryson flanked him, their expressions cold. She started, then stopped. Your Honor, Dominic said, we call Cleo Harland to the stand. Aunt Cleo made quite an entrance. 82 years old. She walked with a cane, but her voice carried the authority of someone who'd seen everything and feared nothing. Mrs. Harland, Dominic began, how long have you lived with the family? 3 years. Since my stroke. And during that time, did you observe anything unusual about Mrs. Marley Harland's behavior? You mean besides the sneaking around and lying? Marley's lawyer objected. Judge Newman overruled. Tell us about the sneaking around. Cleo settled into the witness chair like she was holding court at a family reunion. Child thought she was clever. Sneaking out at midnight, coming back at dawn. Car parked down the street, so we wouldn't hear the engine. How often did this occur? 2, 3 times a week. For months. Did you tell anyone? Told Levi. Figured he had a right to know his wife was gallivanting around town. And what did Mr. Harland do with that information? Nothing I could see. Man's got more patience than most. More than I would have had. Did you ever see Mrs. Harland with another man? February 14th. Valentine's Day. Cleo's voice dripped with disgust. Saw her at Romano's restaurant with that Brennan fellow. Holding hands across the table like teenagers. Where's Mr. Harland that evening? Home with me and the kids. Made dinner himself when she didn't show up. The courtroom was silent except for the court reporters typing. Did Mrs. Harland explain her absence? Said she was at book club. Book club that ended 2 months earlier. How do you know it ended? Because I called the library to join. Librarian told me they canceled it in December. Lack of interest. Marley's lawyer tried damage control. Mrs. Harland, you clearly dislike my client. Child, I don't dislike her. I pity her. Takes a special kind of stupid to throw away a good man for trash. Objection. Sustained. Mrs. Harland, please limit yourself to facts. Fact is, she made her bed. Now she's got to lie in it. Alone. The hearing ended with Judge Newman's ruling. The marital agreement was valid. Marley's claims were denied, and she owed Levi restitution for the marital funds used to finance her affair. The amount, $47,000. Marley's lawyer tried one last desperate motion. Your Honor, my client has no assets. She can't possibly pay. That Judge Newman said coldly. Should have been considered before she spent the money. Outside the courthouse, Marley confronted Levi one final time. You've destroyed me. You destroyed yourself. I just documented it. The kids will never forgive you for this. Levi looked at Naomi and Bryson, who stood beside his truck waiting for him. That's their choice to make. I hope you're happy. I'm not happy, Marley. I'm free. There's a difference. She walked away toward her battered sedan, $47,000 in debt, and a loan. 1 year later, November returned to Flagstaff with its familiar promise of snow and gratitude. Levi stood in his renovated kitchen, carved turkey with the same precision he always had, but the mood in the house was entirely different. The dining room buzzed with genuine conversation. Naomi discussed her final semester of nursing school. Bryson shared plans for the second garage location. Aunt Cleo regaled their guest Teo and his girlfriend, Linda Chambers, and her husband, the high school shop teacher, with stories of her wild youth. The house felt alive again. Dad, Naomi raised her water glass. I want to make a toast. The table quieted, faces turning toward her. Levi set down his carving knife. To choosing truth, even when it hurts. And to Dad for teaching us that strength isn't about shouting. Sometimes it's just not flinching when others expect you to fall. Here, here, Bryson added, lifting his own glass. Aunt Cleo cackled. Boy never was much for flinching. As the laughter died down, Levi stood. He'd learned to speak this year. The scholarship fund had required speeches, interviews, public appearances. The words came easier now. Since we're making announcements, he began, and the familiar phrase drew smiles around the table. Bryson's going to manage the second garage we're opening next spring. The congratulations were immediate and genuine. Bryson's face lit up with pride and responsibility. And Levi continued, Naomi's graduation party will be here in May. The whole town's invited. Dad, Naomi protested. You're going to be a nurse. That matters. We're going to celebrate it properly. As dinner wound down, Levi stepped outside to clear his head. The November air was crisp with the promise of winter. Through the front window, he could see his family and friends around the table, their faces warm in the chandelier's light that a car drove slowly past the house. A battered sedan with one working headlight. It slowed as it passed, then continued down the street without stopping. Levi recognized the car. And the driver. Marley had driven by twice in the past month. Never stopping, never getting out. Just watching the house where she used to live, the family she used to belong to. Teo joined him on the porch, a beer in his hand. You see her? Yeah. Feel bad about it. Levi considered the question. I feel bad that it came to this. I don't feel bad about protecting my family. Think she learned anything? Some people don't learn. They just experience consequences. Inside, Aunt Cleo's laughter echoed through the house. Naomi was telling a story about a difficult patient at the hospital where she did her clinical rotations. Bryson was sketching plans for the new garage on a napkin. This was what family was supposed to sound like. Come on, Levi said. Let's go eat pie. 6 months later, spring had returned to Flagstaff. Levi sat in his garage, putting the finishing touches on a 1958 Harley-Davidson Sportster. The bike gleamed under the fluorescent lights, every chrome surface polished to mirror brightness. It had taken him 8 months to restore completely. Every bolt, every gasket, every wire had been cleaned, repaired, or replaced. The engine purred like a contented cat. Teo emerged from under the hood of a 1967 Mustang. She's ready for her test ride. Levi nodded and wiped his hands on a shop rag. The letter had arrived that morning from a publisher in Phoenix. His essays on motorcycle restoration metaphors for rebuilding lives after betrayal were being published in a collection about resilience and second chances. The advance wasn't much, but it was validation. His words, finally worth something to strangers, that he started the Harley and let it warm up. The sound was perfect, powerful, but controlled like everything else in his life these days. Bryson poked his head out of the office. Dad, Naomi's here, and she's got news. His daughter walked into the garage wearing scrubs and a smile that could power the whole building. I got the job. Which job? Emergency room. Phoenix General. They want me to start next month. Levi felt pride and loss in equal measure. Phoenix was only 2 hours away, but it was still leaving home. That's what you wanted? It's what I need. Emergency medicine. High stress, high stakes. I think I learned from the best about handling pressure. You sure did, Aunt Cleo said from her lawn chair in the corner. Boy never did crack under anything. Outside, a customer pulled up on a broken-down Honda. Teo went to greet him, carrying himself with the confidence of a man who'd found his second chance and seized it. Dad, Naomi touched his arm. Are you okay with this? Phoenix, I'm proud of this. You earned it. What about you? You'll be here alone. I won't be alone. He gestured around the garage. Got Teo. Got Aunt Cleo. Got Bryson running the new location. Got customers who depend on me. And maybe someone special. Naomi's eyes twinkled. Linda Chambers had been coming around more often since her divorce finalized 6 months ago. Bringing coffee, asking about restoration projects, staying for dinner. Nothing rushed or dramatic. Just two people who understood that some things were worth building slowly. Maybe, Levi admitted. That evening, he took the Harley for its maiden voyage through the mountains around Flagstaff. The engine responded perfectly to every command. Acceleration smooth and predictable. He rode until sunset painted the desert gold and red, then pulled over at a scenic overlook. Below him, the town spread out like a circuit board, lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. Somewhere down there, Marley was living in a studio apartment above the hardware store, working part-time at a gift shop, paying down her debt $5 at a time. Silas had been sentenced to 18 months for the restraining order violations. His children were living with his first ex-wife, getting the stability they'd never known. Consequences playing out exactly as they should. Levi started the bike again and headed home. The house would be warm and bright. Aunt Cleo probably watching her crime shows. Bryson reviewing plans for next month's expansion. His family. Smaller now, but stronger. Built on truth instead of lies. Respect instead of betrayal. As he rode through the gathering darkness, Levi Harlan felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Complete peace with his choices. The Harley hummed beneath him, carrying him toward home and the life he'd built from the wreckage of the one he'd lost. Behind him, the sun disappeared behind the mountains, taking the old day with it. Ahead, the lights of home glowed steady and true.